Discover the best-kept secrets from the leading entrepreneurs across the globe. Learn from the greatest minds in business with the MyCoda podcast. Here's your host, Sam Payne.
What's up, everybody? Sam Payne here, and thank you again for joining us for another session of the MyCoda podcast. Now, today we have a very special guest on board. Marianne Cantwell of Free Range Humans is living the life that all entrepreneurs should desire to live. I mean, she lives a life of pure freedom. And what she does is teaches people how to do this, how to set up companies from remote locations that they can run from the beach with a laptop and basically live the life of freedom that you want to live whilst doing something you love and enjoy doing. Now, Marianne goes into a lot of detail about how she started out, about what made her realise that there was a need for this, how she manages her teams, how she goes through certain processes that help her achieve this, how she can take off 3 months at a time and her business is still running and making money for her, which is just incredible. And if you want to talk about a passive income, Marianne is the absolute guru when it comes to doing this. So I cannot encourage you enough to just sit back and take note of what Marianne is saying, because she is living proof that you can do this if you want, okay? Even if you don't want to do this, by the way, even if you are one of these guys that, or ladies out there that loves to work, that loves to hustle 24/7, Marianne was also one of these people. And we go into depths about the pros and cons of living this sort of lifestyle. We go into depths of why you should try and strike some sort of balance. Now, I don't believe there is a balance, okay? If you are highly successful, if you love what you do, if you're making good money from what you're doing, if you're providing tons of value for people with a lot of great content, or through talks or through consulting or whatever it may be you're doing, there's never going to be a balance where you do, I don't know, a 50-50 split between work and living. But Marianne has managed to get to a point in her life where she can literally take 3 months off at a time, come back, work hard for a few months, and then take another couple of months off, which is just insane. So thank you for tuning in, guys. I'll leave the intro here. Here is session 008 of the MyCoda podcast with Marianne Cantwell. Good morning, Marianne. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks, Sam.
Good. The theme of this podcast is all about business startups. So I know you do a lot of work with guys that are just starting their own companies or are struggling with this. So I'm really excited to see what comes out of this interview today. So thank you for coming on. Now, for the guys out there who may not be familiar with you, could you just please introduce yourself and what it is you do?
Well, I'm Marianne Cantwell, and I'm the author of a book called Be a Free Range Human, which had nice things said about it in Business Week, CBS Money, Guardian, all those things. And I do have to say that because everyone these days is publishing books, so I'm just going to get that little bit out of the way. So I wrote that a couple of years ago, and it was about helping people quit their jobs and start their own thing that would give them, allow them to be a free range human, which to me means being someone who is in control of your time, of your location, be it working from home or traveling the world, and more importantly to me, be doing something that is you know, so you don't feel like you're sort of showing up to work or to your business, putting on, a mask, trying to be someone else, which I think we do as much in business as we do in work. That was a few years ago, and now I've kind of built from that, and I help people also who are in established businesses as well as startups, just kind of really match who you are and what you actually want to be in your business and what you want to have how you want to have your life look with what you're doing day to day to make that happen.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I've been checking out a lot of the. I first heard of you way back when Nathan Chan interviewed. I think on his third podcast.
It was really early days for Nathan.
Yeah. I think he's just done his 100th one, which is awesome. Yeah. And I just loved everything you were doing. Especially for me, I've got an online business and an offline business, so I know the ties of having an offline business can be quite restricting to how you can travel and stuff. So for me, it was amazing just to actually have a look at what you're doing and helping people with. And I mean, as we said, this is all about business startups. So could you just take us back to when you started out? What change took place in you that made you decide you wanted to start your own business and become an entrepreneur?
I mean, to be honest with you, I think I've always been a terrible employee. Not in the sense of not doing well, but just seriously. You know how some of us, I think pretty much everyone listening, we know that we don't really fit that mold, even though we're probably very good at looking like we do, like so many of us are what I call chameleons, and that's people who are very well practiced in fitting into a range of different situations, and that was me. I was a chameleon. You could put me in a corporate setting and I'd probably, with a few mistakes, kind of manage to look like I fit in. You put me in a setting of something I love to do, a bit more alternative outside of that, and I'd look out like I fitted in there. And so I kind of was running my life looking like I was fitting into different situations, but never feeling like I was at home in what I was doing. Yeah. So for me, the first thing was kind of realizing that the world that I was working in wasn't a world that was ever going to be me, and it wasn't fair to ask it to be. That was really my first thing. So then my first step was to quit that job I was doing, which was for a very big multinational company. And I worked for a smaller startup doing more strategic work. And even though that was a much better fit for me, like it was much better culturally and I could be myself a lot more, it still wasn't right. And that was for me when I thought, you know what, I've made a switch. I've tried something else, and I can see now that I wasn't kidding myself. I really do need to be the boss in this situation. Yeah. And that was the big realization. But to be honest with you, what made me push the button? Is that what you're asking? Like what made me actually...
Yeah, that one moment, that eureka moment that made you decide, well, I'm sick of corporate life.
Well, I decided a year before I quit, I decided that I was going to... My plan was to be my own boss. And I thought maybe it would be part-time, maybe it would be full-time. I was going to have my own business. And so at the time, I had a few ideas. One of them was I thought I would do career coaching because I was really good at getting jobs. So I thought I'd help people get jobs, which is ironic if you think about what I do now, which is help people not get jobs. And so, I trained up. It was just more like I needed a thing to work on. I think a lot of us, and that's the first thing actually, sometimes it doesn't really matter if your first idea is totally right, because it's more about getting you in that vague direction. Yeah. And so I was doing that on the side. I was training up. I was doing some stuff. I was kind of like going, I'll do it at some point. Like a lot of your listeners might be here, right? I'll do it at some point. Totally going to happen. Something that sped it up a lot was in 2008. And this feels really relevant to be talking about this with you today, because what sped up for me was a massive economic change, which was the financial crash. So I was living in that time, which actually doesn't feel that different to now, when we had our assumptions about what was safe and what was solid in our world be shaken up pretty massively, right? So I wasn't working in banking, never worked in that sector or anything like that, but I was working in Canary Wharf in London, which is right near that area. So I was literally like my office backed onto Lehman Brothers. I mean, it felt very close to home. And something that really shifted in me, it was that September, was coming back after a holiday. I was on holiday when the whole thing kind of crashed, coming back and realizing, oh my gosh, I have been working so hard, kind of feeling obliged to, because number one, I felt obliged to the company I was working for, like, you want to do well by the people you're with. But secondly, I was feeling like this is the sensible thing to do, that it is unsafe to quit my job. And I got back, took my look through my window and saw this entire empty building. And I just thought, I have worked here at midnight watching people in their work, whatever we think of bankers, they were working late. Yeah. And that's the thanks they got. And I'm like, I'm done. Like, that was it. That was for me. I thought, we've got this the wrong way around. I realized that just because a building is big and made of glass and steel and has a great name on the door, that means crap. That is not financial security. You have as much financial security in a job as your notice period is. If your notice period is 3 months, you have 3 months of financial security, and that really whacked me. And I thought, no, I'm never going to be in thrall again to an industry or an economy. And that was when, within a month of that, I handed my notice in at my job. And to be honest with you, I haven't regretted it for a moment, because I now feel like I have more financial security in when we're going into what's looking like it might be another dodgy financial time.
It's a bit of a scare, we can say.
we could say that could happen. I'm actually happier because I know that even if, look, the industry I'm in now, even if that kind of stops working for some reason, as an entrepreneur, what we all have is the ability to know and understand how to make something work off our own back. Right? So that to me is security. So that's a really long answer, but that I think it's relevant for the time we're in right now.
So relevant. And when we, especially when I speak to people who say more of my grandmother's generation, they see entrepreneurship as a risk because no one's paying your salary. But at the end of the day, the guy that's paying your salary himself is an entrepreneur. So I think that says everything about entrepreneurship and why you should be getting out of it. And that answer just demonstrated that perfectly. So can you just tell us a bit more about Free Range Humans?
So about the company or the concept behind it?
Let's go for a little bit of both. More the concept. I think the concept's so much cooler, you know.
So the free range human concept for me was much like you, Sam, and from what you're saying about travel. I had never really got the idea that working in an office and commuting there every day was the most efficient way to work. And I quite like things to quite efficient, so that was bothering me. I was like, why are we doing this? This makes no sense. You know, I work better at home. It really irritated me while I was there. And the second thing that started getting me thinking about this idea of being free range was, you know, the idea that we work really hard in our society, you know, to do well, maybe in school, university, or even in our chosen field if we're not into the academic side. And the payoff we get is to be trapped in an office. And I was just like, this is broken. You know, if we were animals, this wouldn't be allowed. This is not the top. This is not the top of the chain, people. We got it wrong. And that was it was a bit tongue in cheek. And actually, Free Range Humans started out as a blog on the side because it was such a silly, fun name. It was just my blog that I did on the side of, I did a bit of career coaching. I started up a different consultancy doing stuff with corporates. I have an offline business as well. So it was all a little bit on the side. And as a concept, Free Range Humans is the one that took off. It wasn't even meant to be a business. You know, I did not quit my job to show people how to start a business because I didn't know how to do it at the time. So that would have been stupid. But that's what kind of took off. As part of free ranging, one of my tenets behind it is that have control over your time, but also your location. Now, for me, at the time, this meant when I first quit my job, I wasn't even thinking about traveling the world. You know, like I'm from Australia. I'm living in London. My mother was born in Mauritius. My father was born in England. Like my family is everywhere. So for me, travel is just a thing that I was always going to have to do anyway to see my family. And actually, that's how it started. I'd quit my job. I'd got my business running. And I thought, oh, gosh, I have to go back to Australia over Christmas, see my dad. Why don't I stay a bit longer? And that's kind of how the idea of Free Range Humans went from being just about quitting your job to have a bit more freedom to start getting known for being about travel. Because from there I realized, gosh, if I just took away all the offline stuff I was doing and moved everything online, I could do this full time. And that's what I've been doing up until I think this year. I've been traveling the world probably most of the year, most years, and maybe from 6 months to 9 months a year.
That's so cool.
And but to me, to be honest, free ranging to me is not about travel. That just happens to be one way in which we experience freedoms at different times in our life. Like right now, as you know from before the interview, I bought a place in London, entirely off my own back from profits I've made from my business over the last few years. So firstly, anyone who's scared of that is possible. Yeah. But, I bought a place in London. I'm really excited about doing it up. I'm excited about being there more throughout the year. That is as much a free range solution. I think what we're really talking about here is having freedom of choice. So if you could choose, where would you be located? And that's what Free Range Humans is. It's about having freedom of choice to live the life that you actually want to live rather than waiting until retirement age.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose that's the ultimate definition of success, isn't it? Having the choices to do what you want to do when you want to do it. And you mentioned there that it kind of just naturally evolved. I mean, at what point did you realise that Free Range Humans then was this is the thing that's really going to take off. This is what's going to make it for me?
You know what? I really wish I could remember, because this is the funny thing about these breakthroughs. They don't normally feel like breakthroughs. They normally feel a bit terrifying. The best I can remember is I was running this terribly branded career thing, and it was doing all right. I was paying my way. I was saving money. Like, it was by the end of my first year of self-employment. I was earning full time and doing fine, but happy enough to not be in an office, basically riding that high. I had a couple of people. So when I first quit my job, I didn't know anyone who was properly self-employed. I had a few friends in different industries, but no one I'd hang out with and talk about this stuff. And I made friends with a couple of people, and we'd meet every week for a bit of a mastermind meeting. And I think it was actually in one of those chats when we were talking about what I was doing next. And someone said, why do you keep on going with this career stuff? You hate jobs. And I was like, I do hate jobs. That seems to be a thing. And they're like, well, why don't you just sort of transition it a little bit? So the first step I did was, without changing brands, I transitioned and focused and said, we're going to work out how to find your right direction, be it through employment, self-employment. So it was like a very safe transition. And once I realized, I started noticing at that point that actually all along, people who had been coming to me about career questions were more interested in knowing how I quit my job. And I thought, actually, that's been happening the whole time. And actually, the only reason I didn't start teaching it was I actually found it really easy, to be honest. I mean, not easy, like I had to work really hard for it, but I think very strategically, and I find the business side natural. So I thought, well, who teaches that? At the time, this was not an industry. Like, I'm not joking. 7 years ago, there was not an industry around. So I was like, this is not a business. People want to know about careers, not about business. That's a stupid move to make. And so it was only through really listening, because, as I say, it was not a popular field at the time. It was listening to people and realizing they do keep asking me about that. And I thought, well, okay. And so I moved my brand to Free Range Humans. And at first, just to be super safe, because I'm very risk averse, I said Free Range Humans is about finding your direction for the life you're going to live as your own boss. It's not about teaching you how to do it. And so for the first 6 months, that's all it did. And then when I saw that not only did that work, but people were still asking me, could you please give us some more on how to do it? That's when I started expanding the business side, which is what it's about now. So I say that in stages. I think sometimes when we get these answers, they're pretty glossed over. And the truth is, like, it's one little moment where you think maybe, and you try it out, and you think maybe, and you try it out. And that, to me, is how I've built everything that I've ever done, is through a maybe and then a little test and be like, oh, actually, yes, that was the thing. So,
You mentioned a lot there, which I think is very key about what you were just saying, is people were asking and you were listening.
Yeah.
And that brings me on nicely to what you've done perfectly, is building a tribe. The Free Range Human tribe. So, firstly, before we move on, what is your definition of a tribe?
I'd say a tribe is a group of people who have shared values. So if you got them in a room together, no matter what background they were from, they would find there's something in common. Maybe it's personality, maybe it's what they value in the world, but they've got shared values. Yeah,
I love that. And what impact has it had on your business having such a strong following in this tribe?
I still not quite not used. I've been doing this a while. I'm not used to it yet. It's a bit odd, actually, to be honest. It's had a huge impact. It's been life-changing, and something I'm really grateful for. And the reason I say it feels odd, I think, is relevant, because when I started, I had no following and no clue as well, but definitely no following. And I hand built that email list from running workshops and gathering names at workshops for the first several hundred people. And so I'd met a lot of people in person at the beginning. As it grew, it took on a life of its own, and it went from me. I used to, up until last year, I wrote every Friday. I'd write a Friday love letter. That was the name I came up with for it. and I'd write a very personal or a business email, usually a personal email to my whole list. At first it was 200, then it was 400, then it was 1,000, it was 2,000. And then suddenly I was writing a personal email to over 20,000 people without having done any list building work for several years. So I was just like, I don't even know what this is anymore. And so
it's just
to me,
grown.
it's odd because to me, the tribe, especially, I'm still in touch with so many of the early members who've done amazing stuff. It still has a sense to me of being a little personal space. Yeah. And so I realize it's quite different to how a lot of stuff is built these days, but I just have that sort of sense of a relationship, even though, of course, I don't know most people. I have no idea who most people are on it anymore. But it changed everything. I went from being unknown and therefore struggling to get my foot in the door to being able to, have such trust that at one point, I think I had a crazy idea, which I often do, for running, I think it was a writer's month or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, I basically emailed the tribe. I was like, look, guys, we're going to have this thing. It's called Writer's Month. It's basically like the online version of a writer's retreat up in a Tuscan hillside town with like-minded people where you're actually a writer for a month, but it's online. I'm like, the details are all hazy at this point, but we're going to open doors to the public next week. So if you want to pre-buy a place, and here's a vague outline, really vague, here's the link to pre-buy this undescribed thing. And I think we sold, is it 50 or 100 off that, at the back of that.
Wow.
And that, you can't just do that. And I was just like, and the only reason it was like that was I had a migraine that day and I was meant to be catching a flight and I was like, I cannot do a sales page. And so, but that to me, this is a few years ago, and I thought, gosh, when I did that, I thought I'd be laughed out of the room. A lot of people said, no, we love what you do. We want to do a thing on writing and therefore we want to do it with you. And what you and that's the power of a tribe, is you don't have to prove yourself again and again and again. You prove yourself and you continue doing it to the right people consistently, rather than keep having people knock on your door and saying, so who are you again? How did you start your thing? And that's it. So if you're someone who likes delivering quality, I actually think having a tribe is one of the ways that things can work really well.
Yeah. The one way I can relate to this is my offline business is a CrossFit gym, and that in itself, they're called cults. I don't like that word, but we've got it's only 150 members, but they are loyal, and we've got the luxury, because we're so close to our membership base through this community we've built, we can afford to be so transparent with them that when we have got issues or we're unsure of something ourselves, we don't feel uncomfortable about approaching them and asking them direct. And I think that's one massive perk I've found just from being so close to the people you're serving every day. But I mean, you're doing it on a much bigger level with 20,000 people.
I was. I'm not as active in there anymore, but I was up until the other year. So yeah, I agree. That's exactly it. And also, you say there, the other benefit of having a following, even as you say, it doesn't have to be big. It can be 150 loyal people, is that you can go to them when there's a problem and find a better solution. So, if it's that something isn't selling, instead, you're not going to go to them and be like, why is that not selling? But you're going to be able to say, what is it that you most want help with right now? What's in your way? The amount of times I've asked that question, I ask it several times a year, and I analyze the answers in I love spreadsheets, a lovely big spreadsheet. It's great. I mean, that's the power, is you're not just saying, what should I create? What's a good idea? And going to all these business seminars. You're asking and you're listening. And then you'll always create something that works if you do that.
Yeah, and do you feel, because a lot of people are going out there these days, especially via social media, and trying to build huge huge email lists. And I would rather, I'd like your opinion on this, because you obviously got a massive expertise in this area. I'd rather have 100 extremely loyal, committed customers than 1 million people that don't answer my emails on a list. And what's your view on that?
Yeah, I always like to think of it as whether you're at a stage in your business where you're ready to multiply something, or whether you're at a stage in your business where you're kind of need to focus on the genesis. So if you're at a stage in your business where you don't maybe have greatest conversions in the world. This is the business answer rather than the personal answer. Yeah. So you don't have the greatest conversions in the, you put something out there, it does okay, but to convert, then you have to have like a conversation or whatever it might be. It's a little bit more hands-on. It's not like you've got this automation funnel that's just like taking off all over the place. If you're in that early stage and it is more personal and you are maybe having to get someone on the phone or whatever it might be, or it's working but not hugely, then work on that. I think it's a big mistake that we do is you go straight into magnification multiplication, which is where you go, I've got this thing. People aren't really buying it, so I'm going to put a lot more eyeballs on it. It's like, well, people aren't buying it. More eyeballs is going to be wasted energy because you're going to get the same rates of purchase, assuming it's the same size of people. And so your time will be wasted. Focus on generating relationships, because it's not just about the sale. It's about what you learn through that sale. Yeah. If you learn how to create the thing that sells really well, and then you get to sit back, and then it's a choice, right? So I think at that point it's saying, do I want to have a small, high value list where maybe I offer slightly more high value products, but there is a closer relationship to that 100 or that 1,000 people? Or now I'm good at this stuff, do I want it to be really big? I think we sometimes underestimate that there is a cost to big. And there is a huge cost to big. When your email list explodes, you don't have that relationship like you used to. You also have a lot of inputs from people who are outside of your niche area. So while if you're at a nice, comfy stage of a few thousand or a few hundred, the people who you're dealing with, you'll be able to handpick them a bit better. It'll be the right people through contacts, through these smaller things. They'll be coming in and it'll be cozy. You'll then start getting inputs and emails from people who aren't really your target market. This happened to me, by the way, when there was an article written about my book in the Daily Mail. Don't read it. I hate that article, even though it's positive.
I'll put a link in the show notes. It's not a problem.
Yeah, don't put it in the show notes. It's a positive article, but it's just like, it's so saccharine that I want to throw up every time I read it. Anyway, it got shared by Tim Ferriss, a famous free ranger. Yes. And so Tim Ferriss, who wrote the 4-Hour Work Week, shared this article. My following exploded and I freaked out because I suddenly had a following full of people whose attitudes were different to my following. So I had to weed them out. And you can weed people out by writing the emails that are definitely going to get them to leave. So I wrote quite a few of those. I was like, let's do some touchy-feely stuff for a while until they all disperse. But, I still get great people through that. But, there was a cost. And if I hadn't been aware of that, I would have gone in a direction I see a lot of businesses go, which is when you start getting all these messages of people going, why don't you do things that way? Well, why don't you run a course on this? And you think, should I do that? And it actually takes you away from your zone of genius or your area that you're great at. So I guess I'm saying is just don't feel that, number one, you need to have a huge email list before you have a full-time business. You should have a full-time business with a few hundred people on your list or fewer. And secondly, don't underestimate what happens when your email list gets big, and just be ready for it. So, for example, I don't read my own email responses anymore. I have someone who screens them. Just so we only have certain types of responses that get through, so I don't kind of get thrown and think I should be doing something totally different. I get laser focused on what we're actually doing. So just be aware of it, and don't believe the hype that people are selling on Facebook ads that you need to have the world's biggest email list to do well. You need to have the number of sales that you need to do well, and they can be generated in a lot of different ways.
That's amazing advice. That really is great advice. And what is interesting actually is I think most people would probably think, wow, I've got Tim Ferriss's following here. I've scored. I've hit the big time. Whereas you're like, oh, man, I've got to get these people out of my inbox.
Well, this is not fair. I did have some great people. I still have great people coming from that. But it was just, to be honest with you, I just was like, the first moment I noticed, I was like, this is amazing. It's going to be great. And then I noticed the get rich quick emails that would come in going, and I was like, oh no, you guys know. But exactly. It's all about, and that was really good. That example was great because I think something that makes you a stronger business is getting more and more clear on who you are and who you aren't, and saying it very loudly and very clearly. Every time I've done that, number one, I've thought, what am I doing? Is this all going to break? And number two, it's actually worked really well. So, if you have a particular perspective on something, don't hold back because you feel like it won't apply to everyone. So, for example, I have a client who, has been struggling for ages before she came to me on selling online coaching, and just hadn't sold any, to be honest. And it turns out when I met her, I was like, but you don't even like online coaching. She goes, no, I don't. I just think I'm missing out if I don't put it up there. It turns out she actually has a real passion for seeing people in person and believes you get better outcomes when you're out in the outdoors working with someone directly. And I was like, well, that's what you need to do. You need to say that. Yeah. Because otherwise you're going to be yet another person who has an online and offline coaching practice and no one's listening to you. And so I think that is relevant to tribe, because if you've put yourself out there in a way that doesn't represent you, you might start getting reflections back about that people are saying, keep going in that other wrong direction, and it never quite works. So you have to start with yourself and make sure you're building a tribe that really reflects where you want to be going with things.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of people face issues when it comes to trying to build their own tribes or communities, especially when they're starting out in their startup phases, because the market is so saturated, like you just said, of so many people doing the same thing. So 2 questions come from this, really. How can someone who's just starting out ensure they stand out from the crowd? And secondly, what are the first few things they can do initially just to gain some traction in building a tribe?
Right. Yeah, that's a really good question. I think we're in a really unique time right now. Since I started out, the industry it's gone nuts. This is not the same industry I started out in. And I think about this often because obviously I help people in this area now. I think, what would I do if I was starting out? And my answers are I would do things differently because it's a different industry. One of the things, but there are things I do the same. And one of the things I do the same is I always like to go back to first principles and ask, what exactly am I trying to achieve with each step? So if the first step is I'm trying to build a tribe, well, I'll say, okay, so what am I not able to do because I don't have that? And it might be, well, I'm not able to fill a course. I'm not able to, whatever it might be. And go, okay, well, how can we do that without building the tribe? And it sounds a bit weird because we're talking about tribe building. I'd always go to the first thing and say, how can I do that sort of in a more hands-on way while also tribe building? Now, the reason I say that is I ran a piece of research, it was a year and a bit ago, and I asked 100 people, how did you make your first £1,000 or $1,000 in your business? And I looked at the results of that, and what was fascinating was I also asked them what the time frame was. Do you do it in 3 months? Do you do it in 6 months? Do you do it in a year or plus? The people who did it the quickest, who did it within 3 months or 6 months, not a single one of those people did it through an email list or a tribe.
Right,
or
okay.
No
That's
one.
Interesting.
Yeah,
really
no.
interesting,
And the one person who did it, it's actually a friend of mine who did it within a year. She was waiting it out with her tribe. She was running off other income at the time. So, I mean, that chimed completely with everything I've ever seen and done and taught, and actually seeing it in person from people all over. I really spread the net on that, on that question. Do not wait for it to be in place, because actually part of the way it will grow is by doing the thing you want to do. So one thing I encourage you to do if you're looking to build a tribe is, yes, do all the stuff people are doing online, but don't think that is the way that your first clients will come to you, because it won't be. The first clients will come to you in a more personal way. I think there's 5 different ways. I won't go through them here, but there's 5 different ways I've noticed people get their first clients. And one of the things you can do practically is say, who can I connect with? Ideally offline, because people don't think of offline connections very much. Who can I connect with? Ideally offline, maybe online, who has a following that includes some of the people I want to reach. Maybe they have a broader brand and your people are kind of within that in a sub-niche. Now, how can you do something with them? How can you help them out in some way? How can you connect in some way? And how can you essentially add value to what they're doing so that you are then, people are made aware of you in a tight, trusted space. That, to me, is key. It's something in my book, I call it the free range fast start. And it's everyone I know who's done well. You hear the stories and it's always like, I had an email list. I did Facebook Live these days. I did whatever it is. And the bit that most of us skip when we don't think about it is, yes, I did those things, but the reason people actually knew about me to join the thing in the first place was because I connected up with others who were more established than me. You will not find an example where that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Like, I'm still looking for it. It happens. And it happens in lots of ways. It can be you, like you're doing here, Sam, you interview people, but they share the stuff and therefore you get known. That's a fast start move. It could be, for me, one of the things, I did a few things like this, was I found an opportunity, and actually I created an opportunity to run workshops for another brand in London at the time. So I went offline and I would run workshops for them twice a month, and they were a big careers brand. And I pitched to them. They didn't have their workshops were not profitable at the time. I went to them as a coach and said, I will make your workshop profitable. Here's the deal. We created a contract together. And I literally pitched at them to run this thing. At the end of every workshop, I would put my email list out and people would sign up to it. I was on their website. That got me my first year of business, right? Okay, that's the sort of story we're looking for. Even if you can't do that, look at how you can be gathering people, connecting, with people who are in those spaces. Is it being an expert in one of their groups? For example, I have a friend of mine who's an expert in one of my groups and in everyone else's group on the internet, and his entire business, which is like over 100,000 a year, he doesn't make money through his tribe. He has one. He makes money. They do meetups and he keeps the relationship going. But he met all those people not through online marketing. He met it through being a trusted expert in other experts groups. So those are some ways. And I believe that every personality and every person has a different method that's better for them. It's one thing I work with people really closely, saying, what is the best method for you? But you can see this is so different, right? To saying, let's whack up an online form, pay for some Facebook ads and see what happens, because everyone's doing that. Yeah. Go to where the people are. And it's a harder way, in the sense that you have to really think about it and there's not going to be a formula, but it's actually an easier way, because even though it might take a while to get those first few opportunities flowing, once they are, the benefits are bigger. So I would say think differently from where everyone else is playing, because everyone plays for the middle ground. No one plays at the top. It's a bit of a cliche, but it's so true. No one plays at the top. No one tries to kind of go to the place that no one else is thinking of. So be that person and you'll find it makes a huge difference. I mean,
that's amazing advice, because I've found that since I'm in quite a few different groups, and I go on, I'm a bit of a sucker for Meetup. I'm on there quite a lot because I love going to networking events and just meeting people, because I've got quite, my other business, is it's a online startup consultancy, and I also consult other gym owners and help them bring their gyms to where they need to be, or setting up gyms. And the one thing which people get from me more than anything is my energy. And they can feel me. They can feel I'm passionate about this, and they can feel that I'm not blagging them. I know what I'm talking about because I'm there with them in real life. You just don't get that through content.
No.
So, again, I think that's amazing advice for people. And if they can do anything, I mean, networking for me was just the big one.
And that's interesting. And Simon, I really pause you there, because I think that is exactly right. For you, and I can hear it just from talking to you today, it's very clear that when someone meets you, there'll be a lot of trust, right? Yeah. And so for you personally, networking will be really good. For me, I don't do well in classic networking settings. At all. It's not my comfortable place. I'm actually I'm an extrovert, but I don't do well in groups of people I don't know. Yeah. I'm fine if you put me at the front of the room to speak. Don't put me in the group. So it's a different thing. But for me, having known that, knowing, okay, I need to meet people, but actually networking, I've never really got a client at a networking meeting ever. Whereas you have, and that's the key. I think sometimes we hear these things where people say you must do one thing, online, offline, whatever it is, and go, oh, I must do that. Often it's actually about finding your version of that. And so for me, it was, okay, well, networking events, I had a business partner early on who was great at them. He went off and did that, and I was like, no. What I was better at was, as I say, being front of the room. When people hear me speak, or when I'm introduced to someone or introduced as an expert, then I'm in a different space and I'll build trust with people. And so that was my kind of game, is, okay, if I'm not going to be good in the room, how do I get to the front of the room? And so that I just say that, and some people, if you're really introverted, you might be thinking, God, both of those sound horrible. Well, for you, maybe your thing is going to be networking. I wouldn't say networking for you. I'd say connecting with and having meaningful conversations with a small number of trusted experts. So if you become the person that those experts trust, you don't need to be the one networking. You don't need to be the one having a big brand. You don't need to be the one at the front of the room necessarily every day or every week or every month, because you will have stuff fed to you. You'll have opportunities more available to you through the people who already have attraction. Yeah, so I think those are different. Yeah. I just want to add to that, because I think it's sometimes really scary for people to hear from extroverts like us and go, there are lots of ways, and it's all about going, let's find my way and then do it. It doesn't matter if people are saying it's not trendy today. I mean, networking was the biggest, trendiest thing 10 years ago, and now everyone's like, no, it's all online. Like it's just this, it's the same thing.
Yeah. The one thing more coming away from traditional network, the thing that's helped me out a lot is just even for example, I'm in this group, and the guy who runs the group, he runs this academy. He was over in London at a conference, and I saw him at a post. I said, look, we need to meet up and have some dinner. And off the back of that, he invited more people who were in London in that group to that dinner. And it was just went out for a nice meal, and with not much really come from it business-wise, but just being in that environment with them and being recognised with them, like you say, helps. Even meeting people, like if I'm up London every week, for example, and I always say to people, are you around? I'll grab a cup of coffee with you. And I'll go across London to meet them for a coffee. Things like that have helped quite a lot. If you don't like being in that large, sort of massive environment where there's loads of people networking and trying to get to know each other at once, those small meetings, I think they've been extremely beneficial for me personally. So, okay, let's talk about you've worked in many different locations across the world, but I mean that can in itself present a lot of challenges, especially when running a business. So, do you have a team that works with you for Free Range Humans, and are they also in other locations that are not with you?
Yes, I do have a team. I mean, it's obviously changed a little bit over years, like how that team's formed and how many people they've been. I'm trying to think who I've got now. I think everyone I've got now actually is based in the UK, oddly enough. Not out of design, they just kind of have. I had my old business manager was based in the States. She's not working with me anymore, but I've got someone somewhere out in Devon, I think, who's working on that. So they're not based with me, is the short answer. Yeah. Depending on their role, some of them are like really minor, like, just literally one repeatable piece of tech thing that you cannot exactly automate otherwise kind of thing. Depending on their roles, then we'll have different types of check-ins. So if, I have a customer service person who just does customer service, and we'll be in touch if I'm working, if I'm on work, then we'll be in touch every week, even if it's by email rather than conversation. But yeah, it really helps to have a few people just doing those things so that if you're offline, if something goes wrong, then they can kind of catch it.
Yeah. And I mean, I've been speaking to a few guys who I know love traveling, and they're trying to build exactly what you're teaching. So how could you advise them to effectively manage a team when they're on the go all the time and not with them?
Oh, that's a really good point. I mean, it depends massively on how big the team is and what they're doing, firstly. So I would get really clear on the outset and having a very clear expectation set. So, I mean, the power of your team is in your relationship with them. So I always make it a priority at the outset to have everyone, if I have a new hire, I want to understand. Firstly, I make everyone do a personality assessment before I even hire them. So I get them to do one of my favorite assessments that's for entrepreneurs only. And I hire based on personality type so that it's a complement to who I am and who the rest of the team is. And we're filling these different kind of strength gaps. So firstly, I know their personality type. Secondly, I want to know, when I know their personality type, I'll understand a lot about their communication style straight away. Mm-hmm. So for example, my personality type, we like to have an idea and suddenly it will exist, as with that example about the writer's month. Whereas my opposite personality type, which I hire often because I really need that in my team, will freak out at that and say, wait, where's the plan? And what if it all breaks? And so, I have to know that that's who they are. I'll have to know that maybe they need some clear, structured bullet point notes, like in order when there's something to do. And so I get clear on what they need, and they get clear on how I work and what I need to work with. And so within the first month or so of working together, a lot of what we're doing is watching out for when things haven't happened the way I thought they would, and getting clear on what I've done wrong and what they can improve. So it might be, I had one team member very different from me, because I'm very big on communication, and she wouldn't see the point in telling me something had been done. She's like, but you didn't ask. Why would I tell you it was done? Whereas I was sitting there worrying about it. And so I said, okay, so here's a point to put into our file, that whenever Marianne makes a request, you email back to say there has been action, or that it is going to be action. So it's stuff like that. So the first thing, before you even think about, going remote or anything like that, it's really about making sure you're hiring someone who's right for the job in terms of personality, not just skills. If you mishire and just hire for skills, always goes wrong. Yep. Secondly, understanding who they are and their communication style, and spending that first time not getting annoyed at them. And I think that's a lot. People go, oh, how are they getting it wrong? It's understanding, looking, if they have the skill and they're the right personality type and it's gone wrong, something's gone wrong in your communication, and you need to figure that out. It might be that you'll tell them what's happened, or it might be that you say, tell me what you think I've said. And then say, oh my gosh, that's not what I said. How could I say it better? And I found within the first month to 2 months, I usually get really solid people. People generally work in my team for many years, and it's because of that time investment up front. So get really clear. If you're getting them to do work you've done yourself, which is a really good idea. So if you're replicating that and getting them to do it, write it out like you won't be there to tell them about it. So, write out reams of documents and give it to them to understand, so that it's not just in your head, and that will help you help them out. So, I do those three things, and I think you'll have a very strong support base. Yeah,
that's awesome. And you have a very refreshing outlook on how your business should complement your lifestyle. And Free-Range Humans obviously portrays an amazing work-life balance. So, what is your perfect work-life balance?
That's a really hard question, because it changes all the time. I find I've tried everything. I've done things where I've worked, most of the week and sort of taken normal time off on weekends. That doesn't quite work for me. I do take every weekend off.
Yeah.
By the way, unless it's a big launch or something, I don't work Sundays or anything like that. But what really works for me is actually taking huge chunks of time off. So I'm talking like months at a time. So I'll often go off for months. I've been offline for 3 months, completely offline, no contact at all. More likely during a year, what I find really works is to have maybe 2 really intense periods where you're doing a particular, maybe a launch, maybe an expansion, something specific, and the rest of the year being a bit sort of more about delivery, but actually having scheduled time and not on your business. So it might be a couple of months at a time. That for me works really well, because then you get to do what you're doing when you're doing it, and you get to enjoy your freedom, right? Rather than constantly being, oh my God, I've got to check on my laptop. What if everything's broken?
So I suppose that comes back to the team, I suppose, doesn't it? Having a solid team around you that can just execute exactly what it is you want done.
Exactly. And, it doesn't have to be that you have a business that runs year round in a way. As long as the numbers work, if you have a business where you make all the income you want to make for 6 or 9 months of the year, the other 3 months, you can just stick a tech person or customer service person on to answer any queries, do any tech troubleshooting if something breaks, and you'll pay them. It won't be that expensive because there'll be fewer than you imagine, fewer queries than you imagine happening at that point. So there's lots of ways of doing it, right? And one of them, yes, is that you have products constantly selling throughout the year, which I do have that, but I also know it's not the only way. So just kind of like I always say, just get your team in place just for what you need at the time, as an as-needs basis, and your life will be a lot easier.
Yeah, and some people might be sitting there thinking 3 months offline is insane.
Yeah, it is.
So when you're in that 3-month period, for example, and you're taking a bit of time out, do you still allocate time to manage your team, or do you kind of just sort of head it up with, say, someone who's in a managerial role and let them roll with it, and then just come back to you if there's any issues?
Well, the time that usually what happens if I take a few months off is that I'm actually online most weeks. So I might be offline for 2 weeks or 1 week. Like the other year I was off in Peru for a while, and I was like, guys, I'm just not going to be available for 2 weeks. And so you prep for that.
Yeah.
And so that's fine, right? Like, so long as you have an experienced team, no problem. The first time I took 3 months offline, I wasn't joking, it was offline. I was not allowed. They changed my passwords. My team really takes control. They're like, just stop it. No Facebook. Like, I had my personal Facebook private, but that was fine. No public Facebook, no checking social media, no checking your emails. We've changed all your passwords. You can't even check it. Go away. And so I kind of had to leave at that point. That was really interesting because I had a new business manager who just started 2 months before, or 1 month before I left. So I was a little bit scared about that. But I had an experienced team member who'd been with me for several years. And the reason I did that 3-month experiment was, number one, I really wanted to do it. It wasn't I wanted to particularly travel somewhere. I was in Bali at the time, and I kind of stayed there. Like, I didn't really go travel. I just hung out and painted and
why not?
did lots of stuff.
Bali, right?
Yeah, exactly. I was just like, I've done a lot of travel. I just want to hang out for a while. But I did it partly personal, like partly I really was burning out and I just needed time, and it changed my business massively because I realized I could take time off. But secondly, I did it because I had a feeling I was probably micromanaging things. And I knew that if I tried everything, I tried, checking emails twice a week, all that stuff, nothing really worked. I'd always creep back and do more. And so I said, the only way to really have a business where I'm not doing all the things is to actually stop doing all the things for a period. And therefore, I have to explain it to others properly. Because I think the thing with us and with the people you're talking about who are going off traveling, the guys who are really wanting to do this, I'd say the big tip for you is you will always find a way to do a little bit of that thing that you could tell someone else to do, right? Because you can do it quickly. You can just go on that website and fix that bit of code. It's not a problem. The problem is that is what will eat up your time. And it's fine doing it at the beginning. It's fine. Like, of course you do. You're supposed to learn how to do it. But when you're at a stage where you want to outsource, the key is not doing something because you can do it in 10 minutes. Yeah, it's taking 10 to 15 minutes to explain to someone else how to do it so they can do it next time as well and next time after that. And that, if you want to do it properly, I can't tell you how good it is to take 2 weeks off and have to explain to your team how to run your business for 2 weeks. What you'll end up with is great documentation and a stronger team. And so I came back after 3 months going, has the world fallen in? They're like, nope, you're fine. And I was like, oh, well, I was checking my emails 3 times a day before that. I ain't checking them for 3 months. And I spent half a day and caught up on emails. And I was like, this is a life lesson, people.
Absolutely.
And you don't have to take 3 months to do that. As I said, if you're a micromanager, take a week, take 2 weeks, and you'll learn a lot about how to run a business better at that point.
I suppose it goes back to the really old school of teach a man to fish and he'll feed his family for a lifetime type thing, doesn't it?
I know it is. I'm a total control freak. So I'll be honest, I'll still do things I'm not supposed to do. I'm rehiring a team at the moment because one of my team members moved on to do something totally different. Yeah. So I'm going through this again, and I'll be honest, I'm doing too many things in my business again, and it's impacting on my spare time. Yeah. And so I'm seeing it again. It's not you do it once and it's all done, because people, even though I keep my teams for a long time, people do move on for personal reasons and life changes. So I guess I just want to say, this sort of thing is not do it once. It's remember it and do it again.
Yeah, of course.
Do it again, because your business evolves.
There may be a lot of guys out there, especially people who are entrepreneurs and getting this mad hustle mode that people are in at the minute. It's all over the place. Yeah. They will probably be the people that will never dream of doing what you're doing, but to kind of put into perspective for them, and to be fair, I'm probably one of those guys. I love my work. I love to work. I mean, to the point where my wife is probably nearly going to divorce me, I think, which isn't it's something I've had to deal with, is managing time for my family, which has been quite hard, especially because we had a son, our first son 8 months ago. So that for me was a massive shift, and it put a lot of things in perspective for me. But I've found personally, by taking a step back, things have just gone so much more smoother, So in terms of business, I mean, how have things changed for you since you've adopted this lifestyle with regards to like your productivity, your income and your health, for example?
Oh, huge difference. I like you and like a lot of people out there, I'm a natural workaholic. I know it doesn't sound like it, but I actually am. And I always have been like that, always.
Yeah.
I'm an overachiever, on my friends' calls it. Like so many of us who are drawn to be entrepreneurs, it's part of our buzz. One thing I found, and one reason that led me to all these changes, was I was hit by a massive bout of depression, which can hit anyone, and it's something that we don't talk about enough. But I was just hit out of the blue, really hit with it. Nothing to do with my work. My work was great, like you. I loved my work, but I suddenly, literally, couldn't get up in the morning for no reason. Something goes wrong in you. It literally felt like someone had bruised my head. Like I couldn't think clearly. So it happens to all of us, and different things happen to different people. It might be having a baby. It might be having a mental health episode out of the blue and being like, what was that? It might be having physical health. I got migraines at the same time. So I never had migraines. I suddenly developed chronic migraines, which are eye related, which means I can't stare at a laptop for too long to this day. So I firstly was hit by this bout of this thing that I'd never experienced before while running a successful business. I didn't even know that what I was going through was depression, right? Because I'm not that person. Like I am, you can hear, like I'm a bouncy person. I'm the positive side. And I didn't know what was wrong with me. I thought I was just tired all the time. I literally didn't have a word for it. It was only towards the end I was like, wait a second, I'm reading a lot about this, and this is the other thing. That's the thing that it is. And that was when I had to start getting real with things. I just couldn't take care of things anymore. Like I couldn't understand why. Like I used to be able to, at the beginning, I'd be able to control my whole business, but I got to this stage where it was like I'd been hit in the head and I couldn't. And so luckily I had, strangely enough, I'd have a very core team member who has historically suffered from depression, and she recognized it and said, you have to stop. You literally have to stop. We have to take over for a while so you can take time off. And that was one of the first things that shifted. I went from being that person who, I probably was running on adrenaline for several years.
Of course,
and maybe that was what went wrong in your brain. Maybe something triggered, like chemically. I don't know what it was, but something triggered. And I think it's the point when you realize it's not sustainable. That even though, I loved what I was doing, I didn't feel like it was work. I wanted to do the next launch. It was all down to me. Clearly my body wasn't feeling the same. And I think however it manifests, whether it's depression, which again is not talked about enough in the industry, but really does happen, whether it's a physical illness, whether it's just, actually I've seen relationship breakdowns happen because we're riding the high. We're always riding the high. Yeah. Something will happen. Like it always happens with us. It might be a conversation. It might be a revelation of like your health isn't going to sustain it anymore. And you have to try another way. What's happened since has been that my business has grown. And this is what surprised me, right? I was sitting there being like this overachiever who'd be over-adrenalized, who'd always be able to get through whatever the problem was, no matter what it was, to someone who couldn't quite think anymore. And I literally ran, I think it was for a year, I ran on releasing old versions of emails and tweaking them, and no one noticed. Like my best friend noticed. She was like, your emails are very similar. I'm like, I know, don't talk about it. We'll deal with this later. But I did. I ran for a year on it. No one knew. I didn't know what was wrong with me at all. So we had to kind of rerun stuff. I reran old courses. I got a colleague in who I'd done a lot of work with before to co-run everything with me when I did anything live. So she'd take all the emotional strain away, and I just do like practical delivery. And I got, all I'd say is that when you're at a stage, if you ever get to a stage where you're sort of feeling as overwhelmed, get help from others in the industry. I was as soon as I realized what was going on with me, I was really open. I told my friends in the industry what was going on. The support that came out was huge. People would promote my stuff. Like everything would be done to kind of sustain it. And I'd say, the outcome was, even while I was in this weird stage where I was just like, what am I doing? I can't think clearly. By the time I got out of it, I had a bigger business. And I don't know how it happened. I think it's just that I had to stop running it Therefore, my team had, even though it was like 2 people team at the time, got to automate it better. And I had to focus on my quick wins. So I couldn't spend 5 days perfecting a launch, right? Because I might not be able to think well. If I was like, I woke up one morning, I was like, oh God, okay, I'm feeling okay now. That day I would spend really doing the one thing that would make the biggest difference. There was no choice to sort of faff around with social media. It was like, do the thing you need to do, prep ahead, schedule ahead. And so I was doing stuff in bursts. If I was well for a week, I do it for a week. And I think that's the big lesson. You know, when you can't work, you're taught how to work efficiently. And so if you can work right now and you are a workaholic, you can still do this. You can still say, look, even though taking time off is a very challenging concept for me, you know, the reality is most people do hit burnout at some point, even if you're loving what you do. So when you're in a good place, which you are now, go and fix what you need to fix. Go and plan ahead for what your content will be, for example, for X months ahead. Go and look at what is your most efficient strategy for getting clients. What have you actually got success with in the past? How can you do double of that and half of the rest? That way, you know, and then if you're still going, oh, I still want to grow, you know, use it, like ride the high, keep going, keep hustling, but put a time in the diary when you can actually take time out. Yeah. That would be key, especially I think for you if you've got, you know, a family as well. Is, you know, what if you said to your wife and your family, I'm actually going to go off I'm taking a month off. We're just going to hang out for a month. Like, you'd then have to plan that in advance, but you could do it. Yeah. And I think that's the key. And that's the reason I shared the backstory, because I think, firstly, this stuff's not talked about very much, but secondly, it really proves that if we're looking for freedom, and the freedom to not always be on our business, yet we love what we do, and therefore we're always on it, we kind of have to artificially create these times when we're not. Because if we don't, our business at some point will be something that it takes over more than it should, and we won't know what to do with it. So practice now, absolutely. I'd say. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. It makes sense. And thanks for sharing that story as well, because that's a powerful story for people to listen to. If you had to give someone one piece of advice that's just starting out today, what would it be and why?
It would be to focus on identifying your best strengths in business and doing more time on those than most people do, and less time on everything else. Perfect.
Short and sweet. I love that. And that is it, Marianne. Thank you so much. That was an awesome interview. I loved everything. I mean, I got a lot from that personally. I don't know if you saw, I was noting away while he was talking. So I hope the guys had their notepads out as well, because that was awesome. Before we wrap it up, where can people find you online, and how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can just Google free range humans. That'll be the quick way. You can go to free-range-humans.com. You can see the book at Be a Free Range Human all over Amazon. And the best way, you can also contact me on Twitter at Free Range Humans.
Perfect. And that is all we've got time for today, guys. So like normal, I'll put those links in the show notes below. So don't worry about jotting those down, guys. They'll all be in the show notes. Marianne, again, thank you so much for your time today. That was such a great interview. Like I said, I got tons from that, and I know the audience would have as well. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks for asking great questions.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Okay, and thank you once again, Marianne, for coming on to today's show. It was a brilliant interview, and guys, I mean, that's just so inspiring to listen to someone who is living proof that this can actually be done. It's not a pipe dream. It's not something that is unreachable. It's just a case of putting in the hard work, doing the groundwork initially as well. Find out exactly what it is you want to offer. Find out exactly what it is, who it is you want to offer that to. And can this be done from a laptop? Can this be done online? Do you have to be tied down to a business premises? Do you have to be tied down to a certain one location? If not, there's nothing stopping you from doing what Marianne is doing. And I just want to thank you again, Marianne, for coming on and just telling us how you've done this, how you've created such a strong tribe of people that follow you and just guys that you can provide value to every single day. And if you are interested, guys, in how Marianne does that, I cannot recommend getting in touch with her enough. She's such a cool person. She's so open and willing to help people. So please just hit her up on the contact details that I've posted below in the show notes, and she'll be more than happy to help you out. And talking of helping out, guys, we are still looking at getting onto that new and noteworthy section. We are very close. We are doing all the right things. You guys have been awesome. You've been very supportive so far. And we just need that one final push now. Just, if you can, please subscribe, rate and review the show. Subscribe, rate and review the show. And that will do us so many favors when it comes to actually getting on that new and noteworthy section. Because once we're there, guys, we'll get so many more eyes on this podcast, so many more ears on this podcast, shall I say. And that way we can bring so many more guests on for you. Now, like I said before, we've got tons of guests coming up for you. We've got so many, even this week, I think I've got about 6 more interviews this week to conduct, which is just crazy. And I'm loving every minute of this process, and I'm loving providing this value for you. In order for me to really provide value, though, my mission is to find out exactly what it is you're struggling with, because there's no point me second guessing what's going on. And all the way through this, I'm feeding off people online. I'm getting feedback from people that I'm consulting, and I'm going off real life experiences from myself as well and my failures. But I would love to actually go into these interviews with your questions, with problems that you're having in your businesses. So again, in the show notes below, guys, there is a link to contact us, and there's a contact us at the bottom of this page as well. Just get in touch with us. The subject can be anything. Just say podcast question, blah, blah, and just put whatever it is you're having problems with. No question is a stupid question, and that really is true. So in order for us to provide them as much value to you as possible, we would love for you just to get in touch, guys, and just post your questions there. And like I said before, by all means, I am more than happy to answer those questions for you as well. But it's going to be worth its weight in gold, getting 2 opinions, one of myself and 2 of the experts that are just absolutely killing it online today. And that is it, guys. So thank you again for tuning in. That was session 8 of the MyCoda podcast. We are nearly in double digits. The first little win, I suppose we could call it, of the MyCoda podcast. And thank you again for just showing your support and doing everything you've done by spreading the word and the love across your communities online. And if you just keep doing that for us, that would be amazing. I'll leave it here, guys. Have a great day. This was session 008 of the MyCoda podcast with Marianne Cantwell.